how one tiny tablet can prevent dangerous blood clots. So that secrets lies and that process we can call gamma carboxylation. Why do patients taking warfarin need actually regular INR monitoring? Why doesn't warfarin work immediately? And what exactly is vitamin K doing in blood clotting? So by this end of this video, you will understand the complete mechanism of action of warfarin using this symbol diagram. Warfarin is actually one of the important oral anticoagulant. It doesn't dissolve existing blood clots like a fibrinolytic drugs. So instead, it prevents the formation of new clots by interfering with the vitamin K cycle inside the liver. So this all the process happens inside the liver. There are inactive coagulation factors are present in the hepatocytes. So with the help of vitamin K, it get activated. So the entire mechanism of action we are going to study. Let's begin from the left side of this diagram. The liver synthesizes clotting factors 2, 7, 9 and 10 that you can see here in the diagram. So however, immediately after synthesis, these clotting factors are inactive. So think like a newly manufactured cars are there and we don't have the keys. The car exists but it can't move, right? So to become it function, these clotting factors need one important biochemical modification that we can call gamma carboxylation. Remember, gamma carboxylation. So now just focus on the center of the diagram where gamma glutamyl carboxylase is shown. The enzyme, the gamma glutamyl carboxylase, perform the process called gamma carboxylation. So here glutamyl carboxylase is having an important role in gamma carboxylation. So you got the doubt that what does it do? It adds an extra carboxyl group to glutamate residues present on clotting factors 2, 7, 9 and 10. After this reaction, glutamate becomes gamma carboxyglutamate, commonly that we can call GLA residue. So why is this modification important? In the carboxylation or the gamma carboxylation process, why the GLA process, the GLA formation is needed. So that you can say because only gamma carboxylated clotting factors can bind calcium ions. The very important point here we need calcium. Without calcium, clotting factors cannot attach to the platelet phospholipid surfaces. So calcium is very essential here. So without attaching to the platelets, the coagulation cascade cannot proceed efficiently. So mainly remember gamma carboxylation process mainly for the calcium binding. So once it happen, the calcium binding done, there will be activation of the clotting factors. Once all the clotting factors like the 7, 2, 9 and 10 got activated, there will be blood coagulation. Now the question is, where does vitamin K come into this process? The enzyme gamma glutamate carboxylase actually reduced vitamin K as an essential cofactor. Reduced vitamin K provides the energy which is required for the gamma carboxylation. So during this reaction, reduced vitamin K is converted into oxidized vitamin K that you can see there. Or also you can call that oxidized vitamin K as vitamin K epoxide. So after every gamma carboxylation reaction, reduced vitamin K gets consumed. So if nothing recycled, vitamin K, the body would quickly run out of active vitamin K. So fortunately, our body has a recycling system. The enzyme vitamin K epoxy reductase, so abbreviated here as a VKOR, converts the oxidized vitamin K back into reduced vitamin K. That's very important. The VKOR or the vitamin K epoxy reductase converts the oxidized vitamin K back into the reduced vitamin K. So this recycle is called vitamin K cycle. This off it like a rechargeable battery. Reduced vitamin K is the charged battery and oxidized vitamin K is the discharged battery. So VKOR recharges it. Now comes the most important point, warfarin. Warfarin specifically inhibits the VKOR. So that you can see the vitamin K epoxide reductase get inhibited. So you can see the cross mark over VKOR in the diagram because VKOR is blocked here. Oxidized vitamin K cannot become reduced vitamin K, so that you can see clearly there as reduced vitamin K decreases. Gamma carboxylation stops here. Without gamma carboxylation, clotting factors 2, 7, 9, and 10 remain inactive. It has to activate for the coagulation, right? So they cannot bind to the calcium. Then what will happen? Cannot attach to the platelet membranes. So they cannot participate in the coagulation cascade. Therefore, blood clot formation decreases. Most of the students get a doubt here. If warfarin blocks clotting factors, why doesn't it act immediately? So the answer actually very simple. Warfarin doesn't destroy the clotting factors that are already circulating in the blood. It only prevents the activation of newly synthesized clotting factors, which are existing active clotting factors continue to function until they are naturally degraded. So that's why the warfarin has a delayed onset of about 2 to 3 days, with a full anticoagulant effect taking several days. So notice the bottom part of the diagram here. Warfarin exists as two isomers, that is S-warfarin and R-warfarin. So the S-warfarin is about 3 to 5 times more potent and is metabolized mainly by CYP2C9, and in the case of R-warfarin is less potent and is metabolized by CYP3A4 and CYP1A2. This is actually important because the drugs that inhibit or induce this enzyme can alter warfarin's effect. So that's about the warfarin's mechanism of action. Now let's understand the clinical importance of warfarin. Warfarin has a narrow therapeutic index. So this means the difference between the effective dose and the harmful dose is very small. If the dose is too low, the blood can still form dangerous clots. And if the dose is too high, the patient may develop serious bleeding, bleeding from the gums, nose, stomach, or even the brain. So the doctors cannot give warfarin without monitoring its effect. So instead of measuring the drug directly, we measure how long the blood takes to clot using a test called, that is, prothrombin time or PT. Since the PT values differ between laboratories, we have to use a standardized value that is called INR, that means International Normalized Ratio. So for most of the condition, the target INR is 2 to 3, while the patients with the mechanical heart valves may require an INR 2.5 to 3.5. So the INR helps the doctors adjust the dose. If the INR is low, the dose may be increased. If the INR is too high, the dose may be reduced to prevent the bleeding. So warfarin is prescribed to prevent and treat the conditions where the unwanted blood clots can form. That includes deep vein thrombosis, that means the blood clots in the deep veins, usually in the legs. Pulmonary embolism, when a clot travels to the lungs and blocks the blood flow. Atrial fibrillation, and it is an irregular heartbeat that increases the risk of stroke due to the clot formation. And mechanical heart valves, artificial valves that have a high risk of clot formation. So long-term buffering therapy is often required in the case of mechanical heart valves. So remember, buffering prevents new clots from the forming and existing clots from getting bigger. It doesn't dissolve clots that are already formed. So that you will study in the fibrolytics. So fibrolytics and the anticoagulant mechanism of action is entirely different. So now you have a doubt that what is the antidote for warfarin. So what if a patient taking warfarin develops severe bleeding? The antidote is vitamin K. Remember, vitamin K is the antidote for warfarin, or you can say phytonadione. That is a vitamin K is K, and it is an antidote for warfarin K. So vitamin K helps the liver start producing active clotting factors again, However, this takes several hours because the liver must synthesize new clotting factors, right? So, if the bleeding is severe or life threatening, doctors also administer the prothrombin complex concentrate that you already know. There is a blood products. So, because it immediately replaces the clotting factors or like a 2, 7, 9, and 10. So, if the prothrombin complex concentrate is not available, then you can go for the fresh frozen plasma that can be given to supply clotting factors and control the bleeding quickly. Okay, so let's wind up here. Before we end, let's revise the complete mechanism one more time. The liver produces inactive clotting factors, that is 2, 7, 9, and 10. These clotting factors need gamma carboxylation by the enzyme gamma glutamyl carboxylase to become it active. So, for gamma carboxylation to occur, reduced vitamin K is essential. During this reaction, reduced vitamin K is converted into oxidized vitamin K. Don't get confused. Normally, the enzyme vitamin K epoxy reductase converts the oxidized vitamin K back into the reduced vitamin K. So, it allowing the cycle to continue. And the case of warfarin, when you take the warfarin blocking the vitamin K epoxide reductase. So as a result of it, reduced vitamin K is not regenerated. Without reduced vitamin K, gamma carboxylation cannot occur, right? So without gamma carboxylation, clotting factors like 2, 7, 9, and 10 cannot bind to the calcium. And if there is no calcium, then what will happen? No binding. They remain inactive and cannot participate in the coagulation cascade. So, therefore, blood clot formation is reduced. Because warfarin only prevents the formation of new active clotting factors, it has a delayed onset of action. Usually, it takes 2 to 3 days until the existing clotting factors are naturally removed from the circulation. So I hope it is clear, and thank you for watching and follow for more videos.